Welcome back. The president is suing the New York Times and 4 of its reporters for defamation, seeking $15 billion in damages. Posting on Truth Social, it's a defamation and libel lawsuit against one of the worst and most degenerate newspapers in the history of the country, becoming a virtual mouthpiece for the radical left Democrat Party. The Times is engaged in a decades-long method of lying about your favorite president, my family, business, and the America First movement, MAGA, and our nation as a whole. They practice this long-term intent and pattern of abuse, which is both unacceptable and illegal. The New York Times has been allowed to freely lie, smear, and defame me for far too long, and that stops now. There is the tweet. Alejandro Brito is the attorney handling the suit. And, sir, it's good to have you back on the show. So, you know, I'm looking at this one. Like, I saw ABC, PBS, CBS, NBC, all these that are kind of under the FCC. I see them one way. New York Times is just a private media company that hates Trump. You know, I mean, it makes me wonder, you know, is this, it feels like this is different. Is it not?
It is different for a variety of reasons, but primarily because of the extent that we believe the New York Times went to in order to advocate against President Trump, and the timing of it, which was not coincidental from the allegations of the complaint. These events were taking place in September, October, leading up to the election. And putting aside the timing, the volume of misinformation and fraudulent statements and defamatory statements that we've alleged in the complaint were made is something that sets this case apart.
So it's not about the fact that the New York Times obviously hates Trump and wants to help ensure that he doesn't win elections. There's nothing, I don't think there's a suit there. It's more about the fact that they defamed him in that process. There's a defamation aspect to it.
There is. There's multiple allegations in the complaint about the defamatory statements that were made, not only in 3 separate pieces that were written, but also in a book that authors of the New York Times published just immediately prior to the election. And these allegations are not simply evidence of the fact that the New York Times doesn't like the president, but that they went out of their way with actual malice to make defamatory and false statements about the president.
Can you give us an example of just a little bit of that before I let you go?
There's so many to account for, Rob, that it's laid out in the complaint. But in sum or substance, the allegations about how the president operated his businesses leading up to the election, how he conducted his affairs, the nature of how he came into his wealth, all of these things which are demonstrably false were published not only in the New York Times, but also in these books.
Published as fact in those books. Okay, that clarifies it a lot for me. Alejandro Brito handling this case. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.